It has emerged the Prime Minister swapped messages with the European Union's most senior official as part of her battle to save the White Paper, which has been heavily criticised hardline Brexiteers in Westminster. She urged the European Commission President to give Chequers space to breathe to help ease the domestic pressure, according to a high-level EU source. They revealed the message was sent prior to Mr Juncker in his annual State of the Union address to the European Parliament in Strasbourg. And the former Luxembourg Prime Minister obliged the offered and said he would not kill off Chequers in his speech. Brexit news: Jean-Claude Juncker refused to kill off Chequers' plan after Theresa May request. Image, Getty. Brussels negotiator Michel Barnier has shown concern about the key economic proposals contained in Mrs May's blueprint for a post-Brexit trading relationship between the UK and EU. Since the document's release in July, the Frenchman has suggested he is strongly opposed to several elements but refused to completely condemn the Chequers to an early grave. His reluctance to kill off the plan comes under requests from Westminster and other member states, who believe if the plan is written off by Brussels, Mrs May could be ousted from Downing Street by angry Brexiteers. Despite desperate efforts on both sides of the Channel to keep it alive, Chequers was dealt a hammer blow by European Council President Donald Tusk at an informal meeting of EU leaders in Salzburg. Plans to create a facilitated customs arrangement to avoid border checks, which would see Britain collect trade tariffs on behalf of Brussels for goods heading to the continent but charge its own rate for items destined to remain in the UK. A free trade area for goods was also proposed, under which the UK would promise to share a common rulebook with the EU on standards. At the Austrian summit, Mr Tusk offered the EU's most blunt attack on the Chequers proposals and said they were unacceptable for Brussels. While there are positive elements in the Chequers proposal, the suggested framework for economic cooperation will not work, he said, not least because it will risk undermining the single market. The attack on Britain was described as an accident by Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte after relationships between Westminster and Brussels were left on a knife edge. The dismissal came just 8 days after Mr Juncker had kept his promise to Mrs May that he wouldn't criticise the proposal during his State of the Union speech. Talks are now locked in a bitter impasse as both sides wrangle over the Irish border and the controversial backstop mechanism. Last week, Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab warned the EU with its intransigent approach only risks moving talks closer to a no-deal scenario. He told MPs, there certainly is a risk of no deal, especially if the EU engage in a deliberately intransigent approach. Despite the deadlock, Mrs May claims a deal on the UK's divorce is 95%, with the Irish border presenting the only stumbling block towards completion.